Martin Knuijt is the founding partner of Okra Landscape Architects. Now, it's written in another language, but I prefer to say it in English. It's an office in the Netherlands. This man is a published author, responsible for, amongst other things, the Metropolitan Zone in Copenhagen, the Connected City, a vision for Rotterdam city centre, as well as Rethink Athens. Those are projects I think that some of you will obviously be knowledgeable of. He's also an honorable member of the Russian Landscape Federation and is here to reflect on climate adaptation and the urban environment. Martin.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, first I want to say something to the children of the Intlanganiso school, because, well, you're here and you hope in the end that I'll tell something about your school. Well, when I was at your age, I have to confess that I never trusted a guy in a suit. And especially not in a black suit and a white shirt. But first, I'll tell something about the formal planning. And then later we come into the part of the city, and tomorrow that will be, of course, in the workshop, which is called informal city. That's where Knuijt is, a large part of Cape Town. Secondly, I have to confess that every time I learn something. So last week I learned in Rapa Nui that you have to separate your wastes. And I didn't do it properly today, I have to confess. But Rapa Nui is a culture where they really separate everything. Plastic, metal, every inch, and they reuse it. And that's a good thing, and in the Western world we should learn from that. But we call the island Easter Island as Westerns. So we have to respect the culture, and we have to learn from it, and sometimes we can bring something. I hope that I can bring something on climate adaptation. So that's what the story is about. And for us, it's really important that when you are planners, that you think about a holistic thing. Like if we think about climate, we also should think about infrastructure. We should also think about social structures. And we also should think about how to connect to people. Well, you obviously know this picture, which is Cape Town. We were in a team, a big team that we met Rashik, or we met already before, I think. He was also part of this team led by Nederson, one of the developers for Foreshore. And they are asked for an iconic image of Cape Town. I think the most iconic image is Table Mountain, so it's already there. But what is maybe important for a city, in our point of view, is that you bring a new part of the city, which is an addition of the city. And in the end, it is actually also something that, after 100 years, that you always think that it has been there. So it should be something that has streets where people can walk, and that you connect the city center to the waterfront, because the waterfront is important. That you add green to it, because that is good for people. People like green, but green also contributes to the natural system. So for us, this was also about getting rid of the highway, change the infrastructure, making it green and resilient, and also make it social. One of the really nice things is that, and you don't see it in all these developers' drawings or architects' drawings. Architects draw the beautiful picture, but there's social housing in it. So people who used to live in townships maybe also can live in the city center if they work there. And maybe the city centers should also come to, let's say, parts of the city that are more outside the center of Cape Town. And we think that also then you should create some things that are in very schematic drawings, but are systems that provide for water and green to make the city work. Because many things we've forgotten. We've tarmacked everything in cities. We've created an asphalt layer on top of the pavement, and of course you can drive there with your car. But what's the connection to the natural system? If there's a flood, you immediately have a problem. If it's too hot, you have already a problem with that it's too hot on the street to walk comfortably. Thinking about that, we come from Athens, and Athens is one of the cities in Europe that suffers maybe the most. It suffers from the refugee crisis. It suffers from climate because it's really hot. It suffers from drought. like Cape Town. They didn't have a crisis like in Cape Town, but it is close by. And they suffer from really a lot of traffic. So once that we worked in this part of the city, we said, well, it's really strange that in the city center, there's a 6-lane car traffic lane that is organizing the part of the city. Whilst your city is beautiful, the city has Acropolis, so it doesn't have Table Mountain, but Acropolis, a mountain, it has a center, but nothing is connected. And if you want to go there, you need to go by car. But it also means that nobody's really walking on the street. It's unsafe at the street. And people are sleeping there on the street because they don't have a home. And then, apart from that, there are a lot of buildings, but a lot of buildings are vacant because rich people have left the city center to move to other places because it was not successful. So the first thing we said, well, we need to change the traffic. First of all, we should change it from a car-oriented traffic system towards a pedestrian-oriented system where you can walk. Because even if you come by car, in the end, you walk. As Dutch people, of course, we said you also could have cycling, but and the Greeks wanted, but you could say that's a marginal remark. This drawing is showing, and that was something we learned from the city, is a heat mitigation toolbox. In south of Europe, heat mitigation is important because even people are dying from heat during night because, and it's not maybe you and me, but it's elderly people, people who already suffer. And then this is important to change in the city. The city already had some tools for that, but it was not really well registered, but it was well documented in scientific reports. So we changed that into planning tools and said, well, we make a toolbox, and of course, one of the tools is plant trees. If you have a tree, you have shade. But the tree needs water. And if it's dry, where do you get the water from if you already have a water deficit? Trees evaporate, so they bring also cooling. Water elements in the city bring also cooling. But again, the water is a problem. And pavement, tarmac is the worst pavement that you ever can have. So we learned also that you should have albedo pavement. Not the marble that they have, because that reflects, so people feel uncomfortable about the heat, but the kind of low grayish pavement. And these tools we applied for the city. We also found out that you could capture the water, the rainwater that is coming during winter, and bring it back in summer. And first, people in Athens were laughing because we were the foreign expert. They said, it never rains here, really never. Luckily, at that moment, we had a small disaster event, not a big disaster event, 2 weeks later, because the graphics showed us that in winter there was water. But it was coming heavily during just a day or 2 days. And then even cars were floating in the street. So it proved that we could capture 14,500 cubic meters. And the nice thing is then, collaborating with the Greeks, was that we figured out that for planting only in the city center, they use water for it, that we could be almost self-sufficient. And what they said, well, then make a little bit more, then you are really self-sufficient. And I wrote here down cubic meters. He said, maybe you should add 3 zeros, and then it's liters. It even looks more impressive. But it's about 25 Olympic swimming pools that we put in a kind of low-tech system under the streets to capture the rainwater during winter and then provide it for planting during summer. So we could add really a lot of trees, 800 trees. We could add grass, we could add planting in the city center, whilst we had said we change the traffic system. And that decreases temperature. And the nice thing is that gradually when you start talking in the other way, well, we don't bring back the forest that was shown in Amina's first lecture that has disappeared, for instance, in her home country. But at least we bring back a lot of planting and we restore part of the natural system. And I think that's important in cities, that you restore a system. What we also added was a narrative of the theater of 1,000 rooms. We said, well, we should create something like that. And then I said, well, it's quite vague. What is a theater of 1,000 rooms? So it sounded magic. And it refers to the old Greek society where people actually went to theater. And whether you were poor or rich, the rich paid more than the poor, you could go to the theater, and then after that you could eat something, because it was not only the theater, it was a social system. I think that's important. So you create something that is maybe a narrative, but it needs to be filled in. So this is a kind of informal planning within the formal planning. People need to find out how they can reintegrate and restore the vacant buildings. And one of the small projects that was realized afterwards, because this project is still not realized, was that a stoa, a hallway of 20 vacant shops, was filled again with local shop owners, because they got confidence that public realm could create better conditions for them, bring new clients, and that they could fill in the shops. From that on, we learned that we could maybe also in other cities apply this kind of thinking. And many of the projects in Europe are the formal planning, like the Athens plan was kind of combination. In London, we worked on Meridian Water. It's a brownfield in the north of London. What we learned from that was that, well, by changing the transportation system, which the government already did before we came in, they said we were going to make Crossrail. And Crossrail will bring the city people who could live here within 15 minutes to the city center. So something that was already the outskirts of the city suddenly was connected to other parts of the city, which is interesting. It created the conditions to change a brownfield into a normal city. And then, thinking from that, we thought, okay, here, London, we need to find, because it's in a valley, normally you shouldn't build there, we should create a kind of water-sensitive system that is climate adaptive. We learned there that even London, a city of 10 million people, in a country where it always rains, we think that in London it rains the most of the world. Even they have a drinking water deficit. So we should already capture the water in London. And we made a kind of tool, and we said, well, there are different types of tools. And we don't know exactly where to apply, but we make a kind of system that people can think about how we could do it. And also that we can, further on during planning system, find out how to apply which tool where. Some of the tools are, for instance, related to flooding. That's the first thing. If the river gets too much water, you need to protect. You maybe need to make a small dike. Maybe you need to place the houses a little bit higher. Maybe you need to make a retention area. The second group of tools are all related to capturing the water and reuse it. Filter it and reuse it. So that's actually already making better use of the water that you already have. The third one is to filter it and to make it to usable things in houses. And the last one, it's just because we're planners, it's just to show people that water in the environment also can be fun and nice. And here you see how it could work in a kind of environment. So the green tools are linked to the blue tools. So we have rainwater ponds, we have a floodplain enlargement, we have green riverbanks, and it all starts with the natural system. Because in cities we often have forgotten. Here in Cape Town, we have put the canals and the water streams from Table Mountain under the tarmac somewhere. Where are those small streams? Where are those small rivers? They've vanished. And also in Knuijt, many of the water areas, they have been built on because people needed a place for building. But it's not safe, in the end, to build on floodplains. And here you see it, how it could work almost like when there's a little bit more water or a little bit less water, so the river could expand or reduce. And of course, in the end, you get the nice pictures. But the nice pictures, these are always the selling pictures. We use them because we want to convince people about our plans. We want to tell people that this is the nice environment that people can buy a house, etc. But what's really important is the story behind. And what's also important, what are these people doing here? Are people meeting here? Are we providing schools? Are we providing the right programs? So never trust me completely. To make it more complex, we came to a home city. And then we thought, okay, this is nice. We're going to work in our home cities. We're still working on this project. It's a former brownfield area. But now we learn, like I told you, about recycling. And that our energy is already at its end. So we need to integrate energy solutions and recycling in the planning. It's getting more complex, even for us, because in the end, if you have a high density, which is this is almost London density in the Netherlands, so it's quite high density, but you can't put on every roof and solar panels and green. You have sometimes to make choices. So you have to think about how you can create a system that is related to the rest. And then I think it's all about connection. Connection in social ways, connection in the system ways. So we said, well, we're going to create a water system that we capture the water on the highest roofs, then something in the inner courts, and then something on the public realm. And we make a canal to connect it. When there's really a flood, we can bring the water away. We make a green system that we put green roofs, but we do it mostly in the inner courts because that's where the people are. And we do it on the lower roofs because people could see it or access it. And the higher roofs, okay, they are for energy. We also said we change the mobility. We're going to make all the vehicular systems outside this area and make it almost completely pedestrianized. That makes that children can play on the street. That if you live in the one block, you can go to the other block safely as a child because there's no car that can hit you. So also the mobility system within the neighborhood is changing to create a better environment. And to relate it to social aspects, there are now in these sheds, there are these artists. There are these people who are making these nice handcrafts, almost like the things that people sell here in this workshop. But these people should stay. And normally these people, they are always expelled out of the system because the developers come and the land value rises. So here it's integrated in the system that these people can stay. It's not on the drawings. So many things that are important are not on the drawings. But here, well, you could say that, that there's still a workshop. But what happens in the workshop? It's really a difference whether there's a big house for high prices, high land value, or whether there's also the low income and the local artist integrated. And that makes the area fun because the people belong to the space. Well, then again, we come how the formal and the informal will connect. Tomorrow we'll tell something about what we're doing here, and maybe we're not doing that. I see Jeremy here Jeremy Jones here in the audience, and he is the real hero because he's actually making things. He's protecting things. He is actually running the garden at in Sangalicho school, and actually that's a nice place because once it was just the school environment, and people in the center of Cape Town, they think, oh, they have nice schoolyards, etc. It's a large piece of land. Well, it's vacant land almost, but it's valuable land because this can be a hub. And RCDC and Lufen, they are working together with us on this to create this church and the school into a hub where people can meet. So there's already a sports field realized. And there's now the urban farming garden. And we made already some tools to capture water and to have some small design tools, how to capture the water, bring it to the garden, and bring it again in the system that people can use it, that green can add it, that maybe a social building can be implemented with a small hospital or a small pharmacy, and that people in the neighborhood can connect, because we can't change all the shacks around. I think the reblocking, Andy was talking, it's really great because you need to do it, but it's a big challenge to get it. But what we can do is take these central areas and help the community to bring in things and bring in maybe also funds because, well, we can connect to the Western world where some money is and people are interested because it changes people's lives. And it also can, in the end, change and give a return. It was calculated by Johnny Harris, who's also part of the project, and he is a water engineer here from Cape Town. He said, well, if we just prevent from leakages in the school, we can already save quite a lot of money. And it's that much that you can save during a year that if you do it all over Knuijt, in all schools, if you should do it there, you can build a school for it. That much money. So I think gradually, if we work together, then even the formal planning can inform the informal planning. And in the end, of course, we need to understand, and that's great of this day, the informal planning and the things that are happening around the city to change the city as a whole, because you can't see it separately. And that's what I hope to assist on, and that we can collaborate with a lot of great people who are here. And tomorrow, I hope that you can be present because on the workshop, we're going to look at some schoolyards and other places in Knuijt, around your school, but also around Zola School and some other schools, and think about, together, brainstorm, how can we change things for the good? And what is what people want and what could be good? Because that's always the question.
Thank you, Martin. You are a great salesman, good sir, because as you were going through your earlier projects and you were showing these amazing pictures, I was waiting to find out what the Lucanio hub is going to look like once you're done with it. And now you told me that I have to come back tomorrow in order for me to go find out what it's going to be like that.
I'm sorry for that.
Not at all. How inspirational was that? Fantastic, man. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.